Okay, it's September 17th, 2011, and we're interviewing Bernie Schneider, who was our 5th to 6th grade teacher at PS 165. Now, when did you come to PS 165?
I think it was 1957.
Okay.
I had been in Bedford-Stuyvesant in PS 45 for a number of years before I came to Queens.
Okay. And what was the reason why it ended up that you taught our class for both the 5th and the 6th grade?
Well, that was by my request. It was unusual. It never really happened. I don't know of anyone else who did it. But I was so involved with the 5th grade class and enjoyed working with the class so much, and it seemed to be mutual, that I requested from the principal that I take the class into the 6th grade, and he was willing to let me do it.
Okay. And why was the 5th and 6th grade class, why was that special?
Well, I taught for over 50 years altogether, between elementary and college, and volunteering as a teacher in Fort Washington also when I retired from working as a teacher. And this is not unique to me, but every teacher finds that a class has a chemistry to it. And it was just great chemistry that existed with this particular group. Working together, we did a lot of amazing things together, and it was a very cooperative group. It was a very happy time for me, and I decided I wanted to have another year of it. And apparently the students in the class and the parents who I met were quite satisfied and willing to go along. I ran a dance club at 165, and a number of the people in the class were in the dance club. At one time, I brought in melody flutes, and I taught everyone to play, and we put on a concert for the PTA at one of their evening meetings. So that was special. And a very special thing we did, because of the kind of group that it was, every year each class in a grade level would have to put a play on for an assembly. And usually it was a canned play. It was a script out of a book or a magazine that someone had prepared. And what we did was we wrote our own script for a play, and we put on the play. So it was a real communal effort to write the script, to prepare the whole thing, to create the whole thing, rather than just taking something that was written by someone else.
Do you remember what the play was about?
My recollection is that we mixed a number of things together. It had some elements of The Wizard of Oz in it. It was just a combination of things, ideas that came into our heads. Also, what we did is we made up some slides to serve as scenery, which were projected onto the stage as part of the play. So we were really into the arts and music and dance, and I had a chance to do these things which I enjoyed doing, which I had done in camping as a counselor and as a director of camping. And I was able to incorporate these along with the reading and writing and math and social studies and everything else. So it was a real fun kind of journey. And that's why I kept that class together for another year. And I haven't been sorry ever since.
And you taught us how many different types of subjects?
Well, I taught every subject. Elementary school teacher teaches everything. We did not have special teachers at that time. Subsequently, schools did have science teachers and music and art teachers and such, although in recent years the budget has eliminated a lot of that. But at the time that I taught elementary school, I taught every subject. I also conducted the singing at the assemblies. With my musical background, I conducted the Star Spangled Banner and other things. So I was very involved, and I love teaching. I always loved teaching. And this class, I remember my first class very well from Bedford-Stuyvesant. I still remember the names. And I think this is also rather common. You kind of remember your first class. In between, there are a lot of classes that came and went, and that didn't happen. And your class, the 5th and 6th grade class, was practically my last elementary school class because at the end of that year, you guys went on to junior high school, and I stayed on only another half a year at 165. I think I had a 4th grade at that time. I wasn't too thrilled with it. It was a kind of a disappointment after 2 years with the same class. And then in the middle of that year, there was a superintendent from the city who came to the school, and he requested me. He wanted to pluck me out of there and send me to a district as a specialist in curriculum and teaching. And he was the superintendent for curriculum development in the New York City School District. And I was happy to go. I had my doctorate from Teachers College, Columbia at that point. And that was one reason I think he selected me. And I only did that for a half a year because a half a year later I was appointed to Hunter College for the education department.
And how long did you stay there?
18 years at Hunter.
And what was your position there?
Well, I was a professor of education and I was also the deputy dean of the programs in education, which was a division of the college. But going back to 165, which is interesting. It was an unusual school in one particular respect. For an elementary school at that time, I think we had 6 male teachers in the building, which was very unusual. It was, usually a woman's profession, elementary, and maybe there'd be 1 man or 2, but not a half a dozen. And we formed an interesting group. We had our own lunch room, the male teachers, and eventually we got very friendly, and we had sort of a cousins club where we would meet every month at a different person's house. We got to know the spouses and the children and everyone else. And there were women too. There were a number of women. One of the teachers I was very close to was B. Fader. I don't know if you remember her.
I remember.
B. Fader and I worked together very closely in 5th grade. We did sort of an unusual thing in the phys ed program because both our classes were in the gym at the same time in the schedule that we had. And she did the physical education exercises, and I did the dancing, which was because that was my thing, folk dancing, which was a little unusual, but we worked very closely together. In fact, when I was at Hunter, a couple of summers we had a special program training teachers.
Right.
People who already had degrees but were taking a crash course because there was a need at that time. And I was director of that program for a couple of summers. I hired B. Fader to teach some courses for us. I also hired Al Tunkel, who was one of the male teachers. I don't know if you remember him. He worked there too for me one summer. And So it was sort of a carryover from 165 to Hunter that way.
Right.
And as I mentioned, I was mentioning to Maxine and Cheryl before, which I had told them before anyway. Maybe I told you also. Pam Waldman Smith, she's married now, was my student at Hunter. So she was my student in 5th and 6th grade, and she was the only elementary student I ever had in college as well, which was kind of exciting for me.
As far as moments that you can remember from 165, I think you mentioned when you had one of your children was born.
Yes, well, there were 2 children of the 3 who came to my classes when you guys were in 5th and 6th grade. First, when my daughter, who's our oldest, came, she was about 5 years old at the time, and all the girls in the class were mothering her all day long. That was quite something. And then 5 years later, not 5 years later, a year later, or maybe it was the same year in January, my youngest son was born, and when he was born, I gave out bubblegum cigars, blue ones for the boys in the class and pink ones for the girls in the class. So we celebrated his arrival there.
Were there any other things that you can remember from 165?
I remember the dance festival in the schoolyard, which I organized. I created it and organized it.
And we have pictures of you.
And each class, each grade, all the classes in a grade put on a particular dance, and each grade put on a different dance, and that was quite a thing in the schoolyard. I also took the dance club to Cunningham Park each year for maypole dances in the spring.
Right.
And that was, special. And I must say that our group was one of the best at the park. It involved sort of an intricate arrangement to get these streamers wound around the pole. And some of the schools were disasters, I must say. And they just were straggling and tied knots and all the rest of it. But I had figured out how to do this thing, and I trained the group, and it was perfect. It was a beautiful pole. So that was special.
And you kept in contact with a number of students since then?
As many as I could contact or were able to contact me. The one I contacted the most was Pam. I visited her when she taught in a private school in Queens, her first job as a teacher. And subsequently, when she got a job teaching in Levittown School District on the island, I visited her there. And one of my visits, I taught her class a lesson. It was a 3rd grade class, and I taught them a social studies lesson. And Pam always kept in touch. So I was at Pam's wedding when she got married. I was at her son's bar mitzvah, her daughter's bat mitzvah, and last year we were at her son's wedding. And then Cheryl, somehow, Cheryl Diamond, always kept in touch over the years. When she moved to California, she used to write to me in the days before email, and we corresponded. And we have friends in Los Angeles who we visit periodically, and every time we went to Los Angeles, we would visit with Cheryl also. And thanks to Cheryl, I hooked up with someone known as Louis Papier, who I lost contact with, but who I remembered very well. I remembered his mother, Sarah, very well also, because she would come into school quite often and we would talk. And I remember visiting the Papier family in the Berkshires many years ago. whole family was still intact.
Okay, so you retired in what year was that?
I retired from teaching in 1984.
But since then you've done volunteer work.
Well, I did volunteer work for 9 years in the public school in Port Washington that our 3 children attended. And I worked with a number of teachers. I worked with one teacher about 4 of those years, and on each of the other years I worked with a different teacher. I worked in kindergarten, 1st grade, 4th grade, 5th grade.
Okay, and after that time you did some more volunteer work, or?
Well, I also was an adjunct professor of education at Hofstra after I retired from Hunter.
So you really weren't retired, though?
No, I wasn't completely retired. Of course, at Hofstra I was only an adjunct, and it was part-time, but I was working with student teachers out in the field.
Okay.
That's all I did. You may recall that in 5th and 6th grade, I always had student teachers in the room from Queens College.
Yes, I remember that.
Hofstra.
Yes.
So there was always another adult in the class with us. And I really fell in love with the whole idea of mentoring and working with the student. And I did my doctoral work in that area, specializing in working with student teachers. So I did it at Hofstra also.
So when did you really finally, quote, retire, unquote? What year was that?
Completely
Yeah.
from all teaching.
Yeah.
In, I think in the year 2000.
Okay. But since then, you've done volunteer work too.
Well, I deliver Meals on Wheels. I've been doing that for about 8 or 9 years now. And I'm very involved in the local library in Port Washington, where I'm co-chair of the Music Advisory Council, which arranges, produces, and runs a concert once a month from September through May every year. And these are piano recitals or string quartets or small trios or groups or chamber music.
Okay.
And I do that.
All right. And you're a longtime resident of Port Washington.
I've been in Port Washington since 1960.
Okay. All right. I want to thank you very much for this interview. And hopefully I'm going to get some other people on tape and maybe make a little mini documentary.
Fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Is that the kind of thing you wanted, Louis?
I like to do little video stuff.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, it was very good. Okay. Thank you very much.
I rambled a lot.
Okay.